Welcome, Seattleites. So nice to have you here. We had a wonderful, amazing, inspiring, uplifting, fun concert last night with the oratorio, which is the music that Swami Kriyananda wrote about Christ's life. And it was just, if you just are real still, you can still hear it vibrating here. My name is Lorna. This is Nayaswami Bharati. We welcome everyone here this morning. Join us in this service. It's a great privilege to come together like this. This topic of reason versus intuition has a tendency to, that word versus, it has a tendency to start dividing things right off the bat. We either need reason, we need intuition. And it's not that we're trying to throw out reason. We need reason to examine and look at our life experiences, to try to make sense of them. Is a very reasonable thing to do. And Swami Kriyananda, who's the founder of Ananda, who wrote the readings that we share every week, he said that common sense clarifies reason. Last week, in fact, the topic was common sense and how we need that to keep us grounded. We need it to keep us moving forward. And reason is a part of that. So they go together. And I laughed at myself, though. Reason is the way that we almost always, that I start examining things. In fact, last night as I'm working on talking today in this topic, I caught myself and I had to laugh out loud. I had a stack of books about this high, and I was walking into my bedroom to prepare for a talk on intuition. And I just stopped for a moment and I thought, I think there's something wrong here. They were books that Swami wrote and that Yogananda wrote, so I was trying to draw on their intuition. But reason wants to divide things up. And part of looking at this topic, of course, was going online and looking at some things. And I found an article at the Huffington Post about intuition. Intuition is not just something that devotees, that truth seekers look at. It's recognized pretty universally as something that we all need, and especially those looking for success and talking about how we succeed in the world in all kinds of ways. We all know that intuition is part of that. And the great thinkers of the world will tell you that they have an experience that goes beyond reason. And so they, of course, had this very reasonable article about intuition and breaking it down and saying, how does this work? And one of the things that how they defined intuition is unconscious reasoning. So that caught my eye because we have the incredible blessing of having these great masters who have explained on a level, with a level of understanding that most people don't have. And so I wanted to make sure we all sort of had that same level of understanding. Yogananda explained unconscious is a word that he'd never really used. Unconscious we refer to being asleep, being just not aware. But that's not what intuition is about. He actually explained that he used three levels of consciousness. The subconscious, which is where we go when we sleep usually. It's where we operate a lot, unfortunately, sometimes. Subconscious is our sort of catch-all bag of everything that's happened to us, the experiences that we've had, the information that keeps coming in, and we kind of put it in this storehouse, which is the subconscious. There's no creativity there. There's no new thoughts. There's no new ideas. It's all old stuff that has been gathered and is collecting dust and is there. It helps us. The subconscious helps us tie our shoes and brush our teeth and do things that we don't really want to put a whole lot of energetic conscious thought into. And so we have this big bag of the subconscious. Then he says above that we want to draw on is the superconscious. And he wasn't the only one to use that phrase, but he sort of coined that phrase here in our modern thinking, superconscious, which means up above that. And that's where there's unity. Instead of separateness, there's unity. That's where we're all connected. That's where we realize our divine nature and the fact that it's all the same. There's only one thing going on here. And we're all drawing on that, and we're all part of that. And so that's where creative ideas come from. That's where, original, what we call original thoughts come from, is from the superconscious. And then there's this level in between, the conscious mind, which really isn't a whole nother realm. It's the battlefield between the two. And we have a reading, part of our reading is from the Bhagavad Gita, which is an epic story about a battle on the field of Kurukshetra. And this is part of the Indian scriptures. And it's an allegory. It was a real battle, but it's also an allegory for that conscious mind where things come to us. We do battle every day, and we have to decide whether we're going to draw on the subconscious in order to fight the battle, or whether we're going to draw on the superconscious. Which way is our energy going to go? And the conscious mind is just where those decisions are made every single moment. And so what we want to do as devotees, of course, is go high. Go high. Whenever in doubt, go up. Go up. And the intuition is that doorway, is that pathway that brings those superconscious thoughts, those solutions, the inspiration, brings that down into the conscious mind. But we often forget. We rely on the subconscious. We rely on reason because it makes so much sense. And we want to avoid a lot of emotional energy. I worked with a group called the Center for Progressive Christianity for several years, working on Sunday school curriculum for them. Marvelous people, incredible people who are really trying to take the Christian, the whole Christian culture, really, into Dwapara Yuga, to use our language here, into the new era of more expansive thinking and less dogmatic ideas. And they are sincere, and they are devotional, and they are incredible people who are really devoted to Christ and his teachings, but are reacting to the emotional dogma and the exclusive ideas that Christianity fell into in Kali Yuga, in the darker ages, where everything was defined so carefully and everything was held in such tight control and in a way that said, it's this and it's not that. It's only this, it's only this, it's not that. And if you don't fit in, then you don't fit in, and too bad for you. And this is how small it is, and how, just keeping it smaller and smaller and tighter and more in our reason mind. And so they're reacting to that and saying, we don't want that. We want, we don't want emotion. We want reason. We want to take these teachings into a greater, more expansive way of thinking. But in their sincere efforts to do that, what happens is they've totally let go of inspiration. They've let go of a lot of the superconscious ideas. And they're using the intellect to study the scriptures, to define things in a way that they feel more comfortable with. And to the result of most of them, and I don't want to put them all in a box, but most of the ones that I talked to, that I worked with, they don't want to talk about miracles. They don't want to talk about Jesus actually being an avatar, a master, somebody with super conscious understanding. It's all brought down to a level of this is how we can define this. And he is a great teacher, but that can come from anybody. And to the point where last night when we were singing the oratorio, we were singing the joy of Easter and the resurrection and these amazing truths that apply to everyone. I actually had to write a story for Easter for the Sunday school curriculum. that didn't acknowledge the resurrection, because they don't believe in the resurrection. So I was in this very odd place of trying to draw on the inspiration of Christ and the resurrection and this amazing happening and tell a story that didn't have anything to do with the resurrection. That's a whole other story I can tell you about another time. It was a challenge. So we can get too far away from it. We reject that emotion and we reject that feeling, that because that gets real confusing, but then we can get, the pendulum can swing way in the other way into reason. And what we want to do, of course, is balance both. Yogananda defined intuition as the soul's power of knowing God. The soul's power of knowing God. And as devotees, that's kind of important. That's what we want to do. We want that power of knowing God. We want to awaken that within us. And it's simple, but it's not always so easy. We have Swami Kriyananda, who is an amazing example for us. His picture's over there, by the way, if you don't know who he is. Who was an incredible balance of intellect and reason and deep feeling and inspiration and superconscious. He wrote the music that we sang last night. So it's obvious with that experience that he knows how to draw on that superconscious experience through his intuition. But he was also quite an intellect, quite a brilliant man. And we are now, right now, reading The New Path, which is his autobiography. In our book club, we have a book club that meets once a week to study some of the books that we have, and this is our current book. And together we've been looking at this, and we've gotten through the first part of the book, where Swami is describing his experience before he met his guru, Yogananda, describing this tortuous road of working through the reasoning mind to try to figure out how to get to God. And it really is quite an experience to read how this brilliant intellect took this step by step, trying to take this all apart, trying to figure out how this works. Why am I here? How does this work? Why aren't I happy? I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that, and every experiment basically fails in the sense that he doesn't feel that inner joy that he wants to feel. He doesn't feel that happiness or that lasting sense of expansion and inspiration. And so he keeps trying and he keeps trying, and then he comes back and he tries to figure it out, and he sits down and he reasons and he studies philosophy and he studies poetry, and it just goes on and on and on. And I find it really interesting that in the book, this is the first 12 chapters of the book about his childhood and then his young adulthood as he's going through this process. And I thought, he could have written this book, because the subtitle is My Life with Yogananda, with his guru. He could have started that with, I meet my guru, and then my life changed, and this is what happened from then on out. But he decided to leave this in the book. He decided to explain and take us through this process. Why? Because it's the same story for all of us, in one way or another. It's the same process that we all have to go through of using our reasoning mind, trying to figure things out until we finally get to the point where we say, there's only so far that can take us. It can help. It can help get us. It got him to the point where he said, I think God's the answer. I don't know how to get there, but I think that's the answer because nothing else is working. There has to be an answer if I go towards God. His reasoning mind got him that far, but then he didn't know where to go. And then the grace of God brings in the guru because he was ready for that next step. And then we can keep going. But there was a moment, it was interesting, during all of this turmoil, there's a moment that he describes in there where he's reading a book. He's just relaxing, reading a book. He doesn't say what he's reading. And he's there with his friend. And all of a sudden he has this flash of intuition, of insight. And he says, you know what? I know I'm going to be a spiritual teacher. And his friend laughed and said, no, don't be silly. But he knew, he knew in that moment that that was true. And he just took it inside and he thought, I'm not going to try to convince him or anybody else, but I know this is true. That's intuition. That's when we lock into and we receive that superconscious message. And that's what Jesus was so thrilled about when Peter answered his question in that way. And that's what's so thrilling about that whole scene. I've read that passage over and over and over again in my life. And every time it's this thrill. It's just thrilling. And it's not just the words, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And that's enough to stop you. But it's the experience, because we recognize it. It's our experience as well. It's why we're all here. All of us can look back and find that point, or many points along the way, where we knew that something else was true, that we knew that reason was not going to take us where we needed to go, that door opened and we knew which way we needed to walk, where we needed to go, and what was true. I can look back on coming to this path, coming to Ananda. A friend of mine gave me the path, the original version of this story. Never read anything like that before in my life. I wasn't even seeking anything consciously. And I opened that book and read that book, and I just knew that's where my life is going. This is an answer. This is something that's true, that's real, that's right for me. It's not right for everybody, but for me, it was my moment of intuition, of inspiration. And so when we read that story of Christ with the disciples, we know what that is. We know what that experience is, of opening ourselves to that and feeling that come in. And it's the superconscious, that's where we want to tap into. And we want more. Once you have one experience like that, you look for the next one and the next one. Because the more we feel that, expansion, because the superconsciousness is where all those boundaries go away. And so we just feel this expansion. Last night, at our concert, it was just a wonderful experience together. And I went home, and I was up pretty late, and then I got up this morning, and all the time, all last night, I think even in my dreams, and then this morning when I woke up, I kept seeing faces. I kept seeing all of your faces. And the faces of all of the people who were singing. I usually sing, I'm a soprano, I usually sing in the front row. I don't even know who's back here usually. I can hear them singing, but I don't look at their faces. And you'd think, David's up there directing us, and I'm looking at him the whole time. But I wasn't just thinking of his face. These faces just kept flashing. Everybody that was here, everybody that I sang with, I just kept feeling their presence. And I thought, oh, that's because it was a superconscious experience. That's because we got to that level where that intuition was flowing in, and we tapped into and felt the superconscious experience, and not just the experience of the physical reality and the sounds and the senses and the standing together and the colors and everything that was happening. It was superconscious. And when you get into a superconscious experience, there's unity. So I was feeling everybody's experience, and I couldn't divide up and say this was my experience in the concert, because it wasn't mine. It was a unified experience. That's what we want. That's where we want to go. And that's what Christ and the Masters come and say, you can do this. Just keep moving. Now, a little bit of a side note. The Masters don't need intuition. They don't work on even the superconscious level. What Swami explained to us is this subconscious, the conscious realm, the superconscious. Then there's the cosmic consciousness. And that's the level that the Masters work on all the time. That's the level they exist on. They don't need an opening. They don't need intuition to bring them that experience because they're there in cosmic consciousness all the time. We try to find the words for this, cosmic means really big. So, the words are inadequate, but that's what Swami was saying about the intuition being the foundation stone, or the cornerstone, or whatever, the foundation of cosmic consciousness. Because when we tap into that intuition and we build that or feel that growing within us, that's how we get to cosmic consciousness. That's the foundation. That's where we need to start. And then we eventually get to the point where you don't need intuition anymore. You're there all the time. So how do we do that? That's the next question. Once you kind of have that understanding, then that sense, then how do I move forward? How do I do that? I want to live there. I want to be there. I want to have that experience of the oratorio every day. I want to feel that unity and that expansion and that awareness all the time. The first thing is meditation, stillness, quiet. It's why the masters come and tell us we've got to meditate. It's why the Bhagavad Gita in the reading said, if you just approach the scriptures and the spiritual path and these teachings with reason and try to pick them apart, you're going to get confused, because no matter how hard we try, reason can take us down different paths and can give us a whole lot of different pictures. So meditation, stillness, calmness is what we need in order to continue to open that door to intuition, because everything else is vibrating, everything else is moving all the time. It's a moving target, and you can't nail it down. So you need to come back to the center. You need to come back to the stillness inside. And the more we feel that stillness and that quiet calmness inside, then the more we open and the more we can hear that intuition that's always speaking to us, that's always there. Because we don't have to create it, we don't have to make something happen. We just need to get quiet enough to actually hear it. And we need to tell the reasoning mind to shut up, to just stop. Because if it's just insistent, it will just keep pushing and pushing and saying, no, divide this, look at this, judge it, criticize it. Good, is it bad? Were you good today? Were you bad today? Did you do the right thing? Did you do the wrong thing? Did you gotta get it so that we can get away from that and get into that stillness. And then the next thing we need to do is to live in God's presence, which, again, words fail. How do we do that? But we need to remember and try to be aware all the time. Energy, we need to put energy. It's not a passive thing we're doing. It's an energetic, constant awareness, looking, listening, sensing, feeling, opening, living in that presence all the time. The oratorio music that we sang last night is about the life of Christ. And we sing, Jesus Christ is born this day. And then another song is, Christ is risen this Easter morn. And what's amazing is it's all happening at the same time. There's no place where yesterday there was more God's presence and tomorrow there's not going to be so much, or it's all the same all the time. Christ is risen, Christ is born, the masters are here, the masters, go into the astral world, we're here together today, then we're going to disperse, but it's all the God's presence is always, always, always the same. And we need to try as much as we can to just feel that and be in that every moment. The more we do that, the more it's just open, and the more we feel that unity, and the more that we feel the possibilities of that. And then the third thing is to love. It's to just love God and each other, to sit in our meditations and love, to love without boundaries, with complete abandon, with complete surrender, with no definitions, with no worry about whether it's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it, without worrying about, oh no, I didn't meditate this morning, now I, shot the whole day. Just love. Love God. Love without, beyond reason. Love takes care of everything. And it's way, way beyond any reasoning mind, anything that we can come up with our intellect. It's just a reality that we need to be in and experience and give ourselves into all the time. So just love completely in the quiet recesses of your heart, in the secret places in your soul, in every moment, every time it comes into your heart, just love. And that's what will take us there. That's what will open that door. That's what will give us that superconscious experience, that awareness and that knowing that Peter had. They all had kind of a sense that Christ was special. There was something else going on here than was normal. But Peter took it and he declared it and he felt it within himself so strongly that he wasn't afraid to say it. He wasn't afraid to know it and to live in it and to acknowledge it and to say it out loud to Christ. He knew that's what you are and that's what we are. There's no difference. So when you get into that superconscious understanding, all those little barriers go away that say, you're different than me. That's Christ, I can never be there. It all goes away. You're that, I'm that. And that's where we are together. I'm going to read to you from Whispers. O Father, I hold my heart in my folded hands. Teach me to saturate my prayers with thy love. Give me the simple, sincere devotion toward thee of a child. Teach me to realize thee just behind the voice of my prayer. Teach me to feel thy breath flowing with my breath. Teach me to cognize thy presence in my emotions. Teach me to perceive thy wisdom in my understanding. Teach me to sense thy all-pervading life in my life. Flood my senses with thy light. Om. Amen.